Also, word that we're getting that earlier today, the president spoke to the president of Mexico on the phone for upwards of an hour. We don't know what was said, but that's a long time to maybe kind of detensify things. We're told that it was President Trump who called the Mexican president. Reaction from former Minnesota governor, big financial services industry representative, Tim Pawlenty, on the significance of that. What do you think that was about, Governor?
Well, hopefully it's about two countries that have some common interests and have been friends to try to resolve some of their differences. So I hope it was constructive in trying to get them to agree to talk, to meet, and to solve these problems, because just yelling at each other isn't going to get it done.
You know, do you think that a tariff, a border tax, anything like that could get it done to pay for it, and that the Mexicans would have to go along with that? I mean, they technically wouldn't be the ones paying that. American consumers would. I guess it's how it's structured. But what do you think of that?
Well, coincidentally, Neil, the U.S. House and maybe the U.S. Senate is actively considering a border adjustment tax, or BAT tax,
right,
for not just Mexico, but for the rest of the world. And so if they actually impose that, the people who will pay that initially will be the retailers and the people who import products into the United States and buy them. So in other words, all of us. But the argument for it is it will pay for reductions in other taxes, like personal income taxes and other things, that will offset or more those additional costs. So we'll see. The proof is in the pudding, but that's the argument. But if you apply it to Mexico, I suppose Donald Trump or somebody could say, you know, that money that we're getting from Mexico, making them pay on their imports, is going to be earmarked for the wall.
You know what I didn't realize until this, maybe just my idiocy here, Governor, is that this has been out there, this potential pool, you know, wheelbarrow money has been out there if we ever wanted to tap it. And the argument the Trump administration has been raising is that, you know, exports are taxed and other countries, you know, tax what we you know, send to them. So fair is fair. I don't even know if that's consistently the case. I do know, and I fear, that these kind of, you know, taxes, tariffs, whatever you want to call them, a tit for tat that gets building can lead to some problems. What do you think?
Well, there are concerns about it, one of which is, look, if you want to do big tax cuts in the U.S. and you assume you can't just grow your way out of what that does to the deficit, you got to pay for it. They're called pay-fors. So this BAT, border adjustment tax, by some estimates could raise up to $1 trillion over 10 years, which is a large sum of money. So it's a very attractive pot of money. But there is some concern about whether this is the camel's nose under the tent to a feared VAT, or value-added tax. There's also some concerns about, you know, what this does in terms of other countries then upping their border adjustment tax. 160 other countries already have those.
If we had that amount of money available to us, even considering this, why, for example, didn't Democrats seize on that? That's a huge pool of money.
I think because in order to justify it, the only way you can justify it, or the main way I should say, is you've got to dramatically reduce other taxes, and the Democrats aren't really interested in doing that.
I see. One way or the other, I think, you know, people were debating. I know I had Charlie Gasparino here, Governor, and talking about, you know, we're going to see this wall go up. I think that's now a given. I don't know what kind of wall it's going to be. I don't know how high it's going to be. I don't know if it's a physical wall the whole way across the border, but it's going to happen. Now the thing that looks more problematic is how it's paid for. We had some money set aside for this, I guess, dating back to 2006 with then President Bush. But the president seems keen and convinced on this, the Mexicans will pay for it. How likely in the end do you think that the Mexicans will?
I think what's going to happen is they'll refuse to pay for it directly, but through a series of either border adjustment taxes, surcharges, or other special charges to Mexican imports. President Trump will say, we essentially are collecting the money that will pay for the wall. And by the way, if the number is, say, $10 to $20 billion and it's built over 5 years, so in any 1 year it's a few $1 billion, that's a lot of money. Yeah. But compared to the overall flow of money between us and Mexico, it's not that big of a number, and I think he'll probably say they paid for it indirectly.
What is your sense of how quickly this happens? Apparently those on the border say, we have the equipment, the supplies, and all that stuff. We can go like now. Can they really?
Well, the border, the part of the border that doesn't have a wall on it currently is still substantial, and there's a lot of interesting terrain. Some of the land in Texas is privately owned, but if you really put your mind to it and put the contractors on it and made it a priority and gave them a premium for getting it done quickly, it doesn't need to take a decade. You could probably get it done, I would say, realistically within the next few years.
You know, when you talk to a lot of the guys you represent and head up, financial services guys and banking interests and all, their issues, their stocks, their business has been booming, and largely on optimism that President Trump is going to deliver the goods. Do you ever think today's kind of soft market notwithstanding that they're getting ahead of themselves, or that they have right to be excited?
Well, any group, whether it's the industry that I am involved with or others, who say they know for sure what's going to happen in Washington, D.C., is probably being a little too shall we say, filled with hubris, because there's hopeful signs, but you never know how things are going to turn out in Washington, D.C. and in politics and policy. It looks good, but until it's done, that's all it does is it looks good.
All right. Tim Pawlenty, great seeing you.